Through the research of Stephanie Gelman Peck, the Santa Cruz Chamber Players have resurrected music written by Jewish composers who died in the Holocaust. Smuggled into safe hands and hidden in an attic for 50 years, the music has finally found its first audience ever here in Santa Cruz.
In March 1939, the Nazis invaded Czechoslovakia. 2 years later, they converted Terezín, or Theresienstadt, a small fortress town near Prague, into a concentration camp for Central European Jews. The so-called model ghetto, Terezín was filmed and displayed for propaganda purposes. It was to be a mask for Auschwitz, meant to disguise the annihilation of the Jews. In reality, Terezín was a place of hunger, disease, and dreadful overcrowding. It served as a way station to Auschwitz.
Is amazing if you think about an area that has 150,000 people and what that area would produce in a 3.5-year period. It's unbelievable. So many compositions were written. There were entire symphony pieces written, and they haven't all been found, and certainly they weren't all saved. I think it's very interesting for people to understand how this music survived. For example, Victor Ullmann was on one of the last transports out to Auschwitz, and he packed his bags and he put his compositions in his bag, actually one suitcase, and at the last minute decided to take the music out and give that music to Dr. Adler, who was a writer and a historian. And he said, if you should survive and be here for the liberation and I'm not, please get this music to my sister or to my friend, as in the case of another composer. And Dr. Adler did survive, took the music from various composers. So Victor Ullmann wasn't the only one. Gideon Klein was another, and one composer may have given several compositions by 3 or 4 composers. And instead of taking them with them because their fate was uncertain, they didn't know what would be happening to them next, they entrusted this music, and then the music was handed to a relative or a friend and put in an attic for 50 years. And it wasn't until 10 years ago that somebody even started to really look into what was written and try to resurrect that music. And just in the last 2 years, the music has been starting to be published, the music has been recorded, and is still being discovered and rewritten. Some of the music played on the program is in its handwritten form, unpublished, that's never been heard, or that's been heard in maybe 2 performances so far. The emotions are very powerful in this music, and originally when I started telling people about this concert that I wanted to put together, some people said, oh, it sounds like it'll be a lot of very depressing music. And on the contrary, a piece like Serenata by Robert Dauber is so light and carefree. It's an easy piece. It almost has a cabaret sound to it, like you could just be dancing. And I have to believe that the piece was written early in his internment. We don't know much about Robert Dauber, but in contrast to, say, Gideon Klein's String Trio, where the second movement is centered around a theme from a lullaby his mother sang to her. It's very sorrowful and very beautiful. Contrasting then with the third movement, which has a lot of energy, and you hear the trains in the music. And for me, it evoked the image that the people must have seen, because Terezin was a smokescreen camp for Auschwitz. Every day people would see their friends loaded on the cattle cars, and they would leave for Auschwitz. And this piece was written 9 days before he was transported.
That little green card is a ticket to the Terezin Cafe. With that ticket, you could go, I think, once every 2 months and partake for 2 hours to jazz music and have a cup of ersatz coffee. But being transported into a world of fantasy, it was quite nice. On the stage are the Ghetto Swingers, a young group imitating in style Benny Goodman or whatever. For me, it meant 2 hours of bliss. Jews from all over Nazi-occupied Europe, the cream of the crop seemed to have found itself in Terezin. Of course, there were other places, as I heard, like Westerbork in Holland and so on. But Terezin was a unique place in that respect. This macabre situation of a piano concerto on a rooftop at one night and a transport to death the next day.
Shoshana was 13 years old when she was in Auschwitz, and her family was killed there. She survived with one sister, apparently because they were assigned some work in a textile factory. The rest of her family was killed. And when the camp was liberated, she went with the Czechoslovakian Red Cross. I know that it's only been in the last 10 years that Shoshana has been singing publicly these songs that were sung in the camps and that were sung by composers in Auschwitz. And it took 40 years for her to be able to do that.
Since I only have 2 songs to sing on this program, I wanted it to be on the cheerful side, because in today's world we need to be cheered up. The Holocaust didn't stop. There are new atrocities and wars and civil wars all over in every corner of the world. And so I chose a song which is sort of a philosophical song. It's about the beggar who used to quarrel with God about life and complaining and so forth. But miracles happened when he began to sing, Chiribim. Wine and sweetness poured from his song, and the beggar gulped it anxiously until he was so happy that he jumped for joy and forgot his trouble. The meaning to me in this song is, and the significance, that song which has been many times called the language of the soul, can perform miracles or can save you from devastation, from upsetness, and can give you a new outlook on life, more than just words alone.
I think that it's important that people know about what happened in history so history doesn't repeat itself. And something Shoshana said at the concert had to do with that the world doesn't seem like it's in a much better place than it was 50 years ago. And in a sense, she's right. And this music, playing this music, helping to be the vehicle for which these composers can speak and not be silenced, is a way of trying to evoke the message that we can't let history repeat itself.
There is hope when you innerly and spiritually connect to music and song.